What would you do if you had the chance to buy back the house where you raised your children? The house where you celebrated every birthday, every holiday, every milestone. The house you lost years ago because life got hard and money got tight. Would you take that chance even knowing that walking through that door again might break your heart with memories? That's exactly what Harold and Betty Williams did at 72 and 70 years old. They scraped together every penny they had to buy back the modest 3-bedroom house in Cincinnati, Ohio, where they'd raised their 4 children over 3 decades. The house they'd been forced to sell 15 years earlier during the worst financial crisis of their lives. But when they turned that key and stepped inside for the first time in 15 years, they froze, completely froze, because what they saw wasn't the worn, outdated house they remembered. It wasn't the modest home they'd sold with broken hearts all those years ago. What they found inside that house would make them fall to their knees in tears. It would reveal a secret their children had been keeping for months, and it would prove that sometimes the love you give your children comes back to you in ways more beautiful than you could ever imagine. This is their story. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from, and tell us in the comments, what's the most meaningful place from your childhood? Bloco 1, A Casa dos Sonhos, 136, Daite. Harold Williams was a postal worker for 38 years, starting at age 22, right out of high school. Betty Williams worked as a nurse's aide at a local nursing home for 35 years. Neither of them made much money, but they were determined to give their children something they'd never had growing up, a real home with a yard in a safe neighborhood. In 1978, when Harold was 30 and Betty was 28, they bought a small 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in a working-class neighborhood in Cincinnati. The house cost $32,000, which seemed like a fortune to them at the time. The mortgage payment was $287 monthly, and there were months when making that payment meant choosing between the mortgage and other necessities. But it was theirs, their first real home. The house was modest, just 100 square feet with a small kitchen, a living room with worn carpet, 3 tiny bedrooms, and 1 bathroom that all 6 family members would eventually share. The backyard was small, but had a sturdy oak tree perfect for a tire swing. It wasn't fancy. The walls were plain white. The appliances were old when they bought the house. The roof leaked in 2 places when it rained hard. But to Harold and Betty, it was paradise. "This is where we'll raise our family," Betty said the day they got the keys, tears in her eyes. "This is where our children will grow up and remember home." And that's exactly what happened. Over the next 27 years, that modest house became the center of the Williams family universe. 4 children were born and raised there. Marcus in 1979, Jennifer in 1981, David in 1983, and little Sarah in 1986. That house saw everything: first steps, first words, first days of school, birthday parties with homemade cakes because they couldn't afford bakery ones, Christmas mornings with presents wrapped in newspaper comics because wrapping paper was too expensive, Sunday dinners around a table that sat 6 tightly, homework at the kitchen counter, teenage heartbreaks comforted in the living room, prom photos taken on the front steps. Harold and Betty poured everything into that house and their children. Harold worked overtime whenever possible, sometimes pulling double shifts to make extra money. Betty took on weekend shifts at the nursing home, working exhausting 12-hour days to help pay bills. They never bought new furniture. Their couch came from a thrift store. Their kitchen table was a hand-me-down from Betty's parents. Their car was always at least 10 years old. Betty cut everyone's hair at home to save money. Harold fixed everything himself, learning plumbing and electrical work from library books because they couldn't afford to hire professionals. But their children never went hungry, never missed school because they didn't have supplies, always had clean clothes, even if they were second-hand, always had help with homework, always had someone at their school events, even if it meant Harold or Betty losing pay to attend. "We may not have much," Harold told his children regularly, "but we have each other, and we have this home. That's what matters." The children grew up understanding their parents' sacrifices. They watched their father leave for work before dawn and return after dark. They saw their mother's exhaustion after long shifts, but noticed she still made dinner every night. They understood that "we can't afford it" was a common phrase, but "I love you" was even more common. Marcus, the oldest, became fiercely protective of his parents and siblings. He started working at 14, contributing to household expenses without being asked. Jennifer helped her mother with housework and watched her younger brothers while their parents worked. David mowed lawns around the neighborhood for extra money. Little Sarah learned early to be grateful for everything. The house itself showed the wear of raising 4 children on limited income. The carpet was stained and worn thin in places. The wallpaper in the kitchen was peeling. The bathroom linoleum was cracked. The oak tree in the backyard eventually died and had to be cut down. The fence sagged. Paint peeled from the exterior. But none of that mattered to the Williams family. That house was filled with love, laughter, hard work, and unwavering family loyalty. "This house isn't much to look at," Betty would say, "but it's where we built our family. Every worn spot, every stain, every crack has a story. This house is rich in the ways that truly matter." By 2005, all 4 children had graduated high school. Marcus had earned a full scholarship to Ohio State University. Jennifer was working as a bank teller and taking night classes. David had joined the military. Sarah was finishing high school with excellent grades and college plans. Harold and Betty, now in their late 50s, were exhausted but proud. They'd done it. They'd raised 4 good, hard-working, successful children in their modest little house. But then, everything fell apart. Bloco 2, a Purda, 6, cost 12. In 2006, Harold was 58 years old and looking forward to retirement in a few years. Then came the diagnosis that would change everything: diabetes, severe and requiring immediate treatment, medication, and lifestyle changes. Harold's insurance through the Postal Service was decent, but not great. The medications were expensive. The doctor visits were frequent. The dietary changes required buying healthier, more expensive food. Then Betty's mother fell and broke her hip, requiring extensive care. Betty took unpaid leave from work to help care for her mother, cutting the family income significantly. Then Marcus, who'd graduated from Ohio State and was building a career in finance, was laid off during the early tremors of what would become the 2008 financial crisis. He moved back home temporarily, unemployed and struggling. The perfect storm of financial disasters hit the Williams family hard. Harold and Betty found themselves drowning in medical bills, reduced income, and unexpected expenses. For the first time in 27 years, they missed a mortgage payment. Then another, then another. They tried everything. Harold worked overtime despite his health issues. Betty returned to work earlier than planned, leaving her mother's care to others. They sold their car and bought a cheaper one. They cut every possible expense. But it wasn't enough. The bank started foreclosure proceedings. Harold and Betty, in their late 50s, faced losing the house they'd worked so hard to buy, the house where they'd raised their entire family. "Maybe we can find a way," Betty said desperately as they sat at the kitchen table one night in 2008, drowning in papers and bills. "Maybe we can refinance or get a loan or something." Harold, looking older than his 60 years, shook his head sadly. "Honey, we've tried everything. We're $40,000 behind on payments. We don't qualify for refinancing. No one will loan us money at our age with my health issues and this much debt. It's over. We're going to lose the house." Betty cried that night, mourning not just a house but 30 years of memories, the place where she'd raised her babies, where her family had grown and thrived. The children were devastated when Harold and Betty finally told them the house was being foreclosed. Marcus, who'd just found a new job in Columbus, felt guilty that he'd contributed to the financial strain by being unemployed for months. Jennifer cried, remembering every birthday party and Christmas morning in that house. David, stationed overseas, felt helpless being so far away. Sarah, now in college on scholarship, offered to drop out and work, but her parents refused. "This isn't your burden," Harold told his children firmly. "Your mother and I will figure it out. You kids focus on your own lives and futures." But it broke Harold and Betty's hearts when they had to pack up 30 years of family life into boxes and move out of the only home their children had ever known. The new owners, a young couple with small children, seemed nice enough. They talked about renovations and updates they planned to make. Harold and Betty tried to be happy that a new family would love the house, but it hurt deeply to hand over those keys. On moving day in late 2008, the entire Williams family gathered at the house one last time. They walked through empty rooms that echoed with memories. Betty cried in the kitchen where she'd made thousands of meals. Harold stood silently in the backyard, where he'd taught his sons to throw a baseball. The children traced their growth marks on the doorframe of the hallway closet, where they'd measured heights every birthday. "I'm so sorry," Harold said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry we couldn't keep it. I'm sorry I failed you all." "Dad, you didn't fail us," Marcus said firmly, his arm around his father's shoulders. "You and Mom gave us everything that mattered. This house was just wood and nails. What you built was a family that we get to keep." They locked the door for the last time and walked away from 1247 Maple Street, the house that had been the Williams family home for 30 years. Harold and Betty moved into a small two-bedroom apartment across town. It was affordable, clean, but impersonal. It wasn't home, it was just a place to live. Over the next 15 years, Harold and Betty built a quiet life in that apartment. Harold retired from the postal service at 65. Betty retired from the nursing home at 68. They lived modestly on Social Security and small pensions, carefully managing every dollar. They tried not to think about the house too much, though they sometimes drove by it. They saw the new owner's updates: fresh paint, a new roof, landscaped yard. They were happy the house was being cared for, but it always hurt to see another family living their memories. Their children thrived, which brought Harold and Betty joy even as they privately grieved the lost house. Marcus built a successful career in financial planning, eventually starting his own firm in Columbus. He married a wonderful woman named Lisa and had 2 children. Jennifer became a bank manager, married a teacher named Robert, and had 3 children. David served honorably in the military, transitioned to work as a defense contractor, and had 1 daughter. Sarah became a pediatric nurse, married her college sweetheart James, and had twin boys. The Williams children visited their parents regularly in the small apartment, bringing grandchildren for Sunday dinners that reminded everyone of old times. But it wasn't the same. The apartment was too small for everyone to gather comfortably. There was no yard for grandchildren to play in. The walls held no memories yet. "I miss the house," Betty admitted to Harold on their 45th wedding anniversary, sitting in their small apartment living room. "I know it's just a building, but I miss it every single day." "Me too, honey," Harold replied quietly. "Me too." They had no idea that their children had been having secret conversations for years about that house. Block 03, O Plano Secreto, 12020. What Harold and Betty didn't know was that their 4 children had never forgotten the sacrifice of losing the family home. They'd never forgotten their parents' heartbreak that day. They walked away from 1247 Maple Street for the last time, and for 15 years, all 4 children carried a dream. Somehow, someday, buy back their childhood home for their parents. It started as an impossible fantasy. Marcus first mentioned it to his siblings in 2010, 2 years after the foreclosure. "What if we could buy back the house someday?" he said during a siblings' dinner. "What if we saved up and bought it back for Mum and Dad?" "How?" Jennifer asked practically. "We're all still establishing careers, paying our own mortgages, raising kids. Where would we get that kind of money?" "I don't know yet," Marcus admitted, "but I can't stop thinking about how heartbroken they were to lose it. Dad literally apologized to us for failing when he'd spent his entire life succeeding at being an amazing father. The siblings agreed it was a beautiful idea, but seemed impossible. Over the years, they occasionally drove by 1247 Maple Street, checking on it. The family who'd bought it in 2008 lived there for 6 years, then sold it in 2014 to another family. That family lived there for 5 years, then sold it again in 2019. Each time, the siblings wondered if somehow they could swing buying it. But the timing was never right. The price was always too high, and their own financial obligations came first. Then, in early 2023, something unexpected happened. Marcus, now a successful financial planner with his own firm, noticed that 1247 Maple Street had gone back on the market. The current owners were relocating for work and needed to sell quickly. The asking price was $165,000, reasonable for the updated house in a neighborhood that had improved over the years. Marcus called an emergency sibling meeting. "The house is for sale," he announced. "This might be our only chance." They sat around Jennifer's dining room table, all four Williams children now in their 40s, discussing the impossible dream they'd carried for 15 years. "Mom and Dad are 72 and 70 now," Sarah pointed out. "They're not going to be around forever. If we're going to do this, it needs to be now." "Can we afford it?" David asked practically. "Between the four of us, could we actually buy this house?" Marcus had come prepared with calculations. "If we pool our resources, yes. It won't be easy. We'd each need to contribute about $40,000 for down payment and initial costs. Then we'd need to cover the mortgage until Mom and Dad move in, at which point their Social Security and pensions could cover the monthly payment." $40,000 each. Jennifer looked worried. "That's a lot of money. Robert and I have 3 kids to put through college." "Lisa and I can handle our share," Marcus said. "We've been saving for years, partially for this exact possibility." "Emily and I can do it," David confirmed. "We've been fortunate with my defense contractor's salary." "James and I can make it work," Sarah added. "It'll be tight, but we can do it." Jennifer looked at her siblings' determined faces. "Robert will support this. He loves Mom and Dad. We'll figure it out." They were all quiet for a moment, realizing they were actually considering making this childhood dream a reality. "But there's more to think about than just buying it," Marcus said carefully. "Have you all been inside that house recently? I drove by last week and looked in the windows. The current owners have updated some things, but it's still showing its age. The kitchen is original from the 1970s, just painted over. The bathroom is tiny and outdated. The carpet is worn. If we're going to give this house back to Mom and Dad, we should make it really special." "What are you suggesting?" David asked. "I'm suggesting we don't just buy the house," Marcus said, pulling out more papers. "I'm suggesting we completely renovate it, update everything, make it the house Mom and Dad always deserved, but couldn't afford to create." Sarah's eyes widened. "That would cost a fortune on top of buying it." "I've been researching," Marcus explained, spreading out estimates and plans. "With all of us contributing labor where we can, and me coordinating contractors for the specialized work, we could do a complete renovation for about $80,000. Split 4 ways, that's $20,000 each on top of the $40,000 purchase contribution. $60,000 each total," Jennifer calculated. "That's $240,000 between us. To give Mom and Dad their dream home," Marcus said quietly. "The home they sacrificed everything to give us. The home they lost trying to take care of family. We'd be giving them back not just the house, but a version of it beyond what they could have ever created themselves." The siblings looked at each other, tears in their eyes. "They gave us everything," Sarah said, her voice choked with emotion. "Every sacrifice, every extra shift, every worn piece of furniture so we could have what we needed. This is our chance to give something back." "I'm in," David said firmly. "Emily and I are 100% in." "We're in," Sarah confirmed. "James will absolutely support this." Jennifer wiped her eyes. "Robert and I are in. Our kids are old enough to understand why this matters. We'll make it work." "Then it's decided," Marcus said, his own eyes wet. "We're buying back Mom and Dad's house, and we're making it spectacular." Over the next 6 months, the 4 Williams children executed the most elaborate and loving surprise in their family's history. Marcus handled the financial coordination, making offers on the house and negotiating the purchase. They closed on the house in April 2023, officially becoming owners of 1247 Maple Street. Then the real work began. The siblings hired contractors for specialized work, but did much of the renovation labor themselves on weekends and evenings. Marcus used his business connections to get materials at cost. David's military precision helped coordinate the project timeline. Jennifer's organizational skills kept track of every detail. Sarah's nursing eye for detail ensured accessibility features for their aging parents. They completely gutted and renovated the kitchen, installing modern appliances, beautiful countertops, new cabinets, and a breakfast nook Betty had always dreamed of. The old kitchen had been cramped and dark. The new one was open, bright, and perfect for family gatherings. They renovated the single bathroom, making it larger by borrowing space from a hallway closet. They installed a walk-in shower safe for elderly users, a comfort-height toilet, a beautiful vanity, and heated floors for cold Ohio mornings. They replaced all the flooring throughout the house with durable, beautiful wood laminate. They repainted every wall in warm, welcoming colors. They updated all the electrical and plumbing systems. They finished the basement, creating a family room with comfortable seating for when all the children and grandchildren visited. They added a half bathroom down there for convenience. They landscaped the yard beautifully, adding a patio with comfortable furniture where Harold and Betty could sit in good weather. They planted a new oak tree in honor of the old one their children remembered. They updated both the heating and cooling systems for modern efficiency and comfort. They replaced all the windows with energy-efficient models. They put on a new roof, but beyond the practical updates, they added personal touches that made the house uniquely special. In the hallway, they recreated the height measurement marks from the old doorframe, using photographs to match dates and heights perfectly. Those marks chronicled Marcus, Jennifer, David, and Sarah growing up, and they were now preserved permanently. They framed family photographs throughout the house: Christmas mornings, birthday parties, school photos, graduation pictures. They created a gallery wall of the Williams family history. They found the old tire swing from storage at David's house, the actual one Harold had hung from the original oak tree, and mounted it as wall art in the family room with a plaque. Where it all began: Williams Family 1978-2008. They created a memory book with photographs of the house through the years, and letter from each child about what growing up at 1247 Maple Street had meant to them. Every decision, every update, every detail was made with love and intention. This wasn't just renovation. It was a love letter built in wood, paint, and memories. By October 2023, the house was complete. It was spectacular. It honored the modest home Harold and Betty had created, while elevating it into something beyond their original dreams. Now came the hardest part: figuring out how to give it to their parents without Harold and Betty knowing anything about it in advance. Blocco 4, a Armadillo Amorosa, 20-28 iOS. Getting Harold and Betty to buy back their old house without revealing the surprise required elaborate planning and some creative truth-stretching from their children. It started with Marcus visiting his parents at their apartment in late October. "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you about something," he said seriously, sitting at their small kitchen table. Harold and Betty exchanged worried glances. When children said they needed to talk seriously, it usually meant problems. "What's wrong?" Betty asked nervously. "Nothing's wrong," Marcus assured them quickly. "Actually, I have an opportunity I want to discuss with you. My financial planning firm has been doing really well. Lisa and I have been very fortunate. We want to help you improve your living situation." "We're fine where we are," Harold said defensively. He'd always been proud, never wanting to be a burden on his children. "Dad, this apartment is too small. When we all try to visit for holidays with all the grandkids, there's barely room. You and Mum deserve better. You deserve space and comfort in your retirement." "We can't afford anything bigger," Betty said practically. "Our Social Security and pensions cover this place and our bills, but that's it. We have no savings left after—" She trailed off. After the medical bills and the foreclosure, they'd never recovered financially. They lived month to month, comfortable enough but with no cushion. "That's what I want to talk to you about," Marcus said carefully. "What if you could afford something better? What if there was a way?" Over the next hour, Marcus presented his carefully planned story. He explained that he had a client who was a real estate investor. This investor had a house he needed to sell quickly and was willing to offer owner financing with incredibly low payments to the right buyers, people who would care for the property as a permanent home rather than an investment. The payments would be about $850 monthly, Marcus explained. "That's only about $150 more than you're paying for this apartment. But you'd own the house. You'd have space. You'd have a yard. You'd have room for family to visit." Harold looked skeptical. "What's the catch? Why would any investor offer terms that good? He's retiring and moving to Florida. He wants to know the property is going to a good family who will love it and maintain it. He's more interested in that than maximum profit. The house needs some work, but it's solid and livable. Where is this house? Betty asked. Marcus took a breath. This was the moment. It's on Maple Street. Actually, it's 1247 Maple Street. Silence filled the small apartment. Betty's hand went to her mouth. Harold sat very still. Our house? Betty whispered. Our house is for sale. It is, Marcus confirmed, and I know this investor personally. I've told him about you, about your situation. He's willing to offer you terms no bank would ever approve. You could actually afford to buy back the house, Mom. No, Harold said immediately, his voice firm. Absolutely not. We lost that house once. I won't lose it again. I won't put your mother through that heartbreak twice. Dad, the terms are incredibly favorable, Marcus insisted. I've run the numbers 100 times. You can afford this. And if you ever have trouble making payments, Lisa and I are here to help. So are Jennifer, David, and Sarah. This is important to all of us. We can't take money from our children, Betty said, though her voice was shaking with emotion at the thought of going back to their home. You wouldn't be taking anything. You'd be buying a house, and your family would be supporting you the way you supported us our entire lives. Mom, Dad, you sacrificed everything to give us a home. Let us help you have one again. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus brought his parents detailed financial information, worked with them to understand the terms, and slowly convinced them it was actually possible. His siblings called regularly, encouraging them to consider it seriously. The deciding moment came when all 4 children and their spouses gathered at Harold and Betty's apartment for a planned family meeting. Mom, Dad, Jennifer said, speaking for all the siblings. We've talked about this, all of us. We want to help with the down payment. Consider it a gift or an early inheritance or however you need to think of it, but please let us do this for you. Let us help you go home. Betty was crying. Harold's jaw was set, fighting his pride and his longing. You deserve to go home, Sarah added softly. You deserve to live in a real house with space and comfort. You earned that. Let us help you have it. We'd need to see the house first, Harold finally said, his resistance crumbling. We need to know what condition it's in, what it would cost to maintain. The siblings exchanged glances. This was the moment they'd been planning for. Of course, Marcus said. I have the keys. The investor said you could walk through at any time. How about this Saturday? Saturday, November 4th, 2023. The day Harold and Betty Williams would walk back into their home for the first time in 15 years. The day they would discover what their children had really been planning. The siblings spent that week making final preparations. They stocked the kitchen with Harold and Betty's favorite foods. They made up the master bedroom beautifully. They had flowers delivered and placed throughout the house. They prepared the final surprise elements. On Saturday morning, all 4 children and their families gathered at 1247 Maple Street before Harold and Betty arrived. The grandchildren, 9 in total ranging from ages 5 to 16, were vibrating with excitement. Remember, Marcus told his nieces and nephews, when Grandma and Grandpa arrive, let them go in first. We'll follow after they've had a moment to see. And yes, they're probably going to cry. That's okay. These are happy tears. Harold and Betty drove to Maple Street in Harold's 15-year-old sedan, both nervous and emotional. They deliberately avoided driving by the house for the past 5 years because it hurt too much to see it belonging to someone else. As they pulled up, Betty gasped. The house looked beautiful, freshly painted in a warm cream color with dark green shutters, new roof, landscaped yard. It looked cared for and loved. It's been maintained well, Harold observed, his voice tight with emotion. That's good. That's really good. They sat in the car for a moment, gathering courage. Are we really doing this? Betty asked, her voice shaking. Are we really going to walk back in there? Harold took her hand, the same hand he'd held for 48 years of marriage. Only if you want to, honey. If it's too hard, we don't have to. Betty squared her shoulders. I want to. I need to see it again, even if we decide not to buy it. I need to see our home one more time. They walked up the front path together, Harold's arm around Betty's shoulders. Marcus had given them the keys, explaining the investor wanted them to walk through alone first, to decide privately without pressure. Harold put the key in the lock. His hand was shaking. The door opened. They stepped inside and froze. Bloco 5. A Descoberta. 28. On 36. For a long moment, Harold and Betty stood completely still in the doorway, unable to process what they were seeing. This wasn't the house they remembered. This wasn't the worn, modest house they'd left 15 years ago with original 1970s fixtures and worn carpets and peeling wallpaper. This was something else entirely. The entryway where they stood had beautiful wood laminate floors. The walls were painted a warm, welcoming color. Modern light fixtures cast soft, beautiful light, and directly in front of them on the main wall was something that made Betty gasp and grab Harold's arm. A large framed photograph. Their family. All 6 of them on Christmas morning, probably 1995, based on the children's ages. They were in pajamas, gathered around the Christmas tree in this very living room, laughing at something. It was a candid shot, capturing pure joy. Betty's legs went weak. Harold steadied her, though he was shaking too. What is this?" Betty whispered. They moved slowly into the living room, and with each step, new impossibilities revealed themselves. The living room was beautifully furnished with comfortable, quality furniture. The walls were covered with framed photographs, birthday parties, school photos, family dinners, random Tuesday afternoons. Every picture was from their time in this house, their family, their memories. "Harold," Betty said, her voice barely audible. "What's happening? Who did this?" They moved like sleepwalkers into the kitchen, and Betty actually cried out. The kitchen was stunning. Modern appliances, beautiful countertops, custom cabinets, and a breakfast nook with a built-in bench and cushions. Sunlight streamed through new windows. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of, but never could afford. On the refrigerator was a magnet, the kind that holds photos. The magnet said Williams Family Kitchen, where love tastes like home, and there were more photos. Betty cooking, Harold washing dishes, children doing homework at the old table. Harold opened the refrigerator with shaking hands. It was fully stocked with all their favorite foods. In the freezer, Betty's favorite ice cream, the expensive kind they rarely bought. "I don't understand," Harold kept repeating. "I don't understand what's happening." They walked through the house in a daze. 3 bedrooms, all beautifully furnished. The master bedroom had a comfortable bed made up with high-quality linens. On the nightstand were 2 framed photos, their wedding picture from 1975, and a picture of them with all 4 children on the front steps of this house. The bathroom was completely renovated, modern, accessible, beautiful. Betty saw the walk-in shower with grab bars, clearly designed for their age and safety, and her hands trembled as she touched the fixtures. In the hallway, they found something that made them both break down completely. The doorframe. The old doorframe where they'd measured their children's heights every birthday. It was gone, of course, removed years ago by previous owners, but mounted on the wall in a custom frame was a perfect recreation. Every mark, every date, every child's name and height, preserved and honored. Marcus, age 5, 3-7, 1984. Jennifer, age 3, 3-2, 1984. David, age 4, 3-5, 1987. Sarah, age 6, 4-1, 1992. On and on, chronicling 18 years of growth, all 4 children measured annually on their birthdays, the marks climbing up the frame. Beneath it, a small plaque. The Williams children grew here, 1979-2005. Betty collapsed into Harold's arms, sobbing. He held her, his own tears falling freely. "Our babies," Betty cried. "Someone saved our babies' marks." They found the basement renovated into a family room, comfortable seating for 12 people. A large TV, games and books on shelves, photos covering every wall, little league games, school plays, science fairs, dance recitals. A lifetime of memories honored and displayed. In the corner was a framed object that made Harold stop and stare. The old tire swing. The actual tire swing he'd hung from the oak tree in 1980 that their children had played on for years. It was mounted as art with a plaque. Where it all began, Williams Family, 1978-2008. How did they get this? Harold whispered. "I gave this to David years ago. He has it in his garage. How is it here?" Understanding was starting to dawn. Slowly, impossibly, they were beginning to realize what had happened. They walked back to the kitchen and found an envelope on the counter they'd somehow missed before. It was addressed simply, "Mom and Dad." With trembling hands, Betty opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten by all 4 of their children, each paragraph in different handwriting. "Dear Mom and Dad, welcome home. You're probably very confused right now. Let us explain. There is no investor. There never was. Marcus made that up. We're sorry for lying, but we needed to get you here without spoiling the surprise. This house belongs to you. Actually, truly, legally yours. All 4 of us bought it together 6 months ago. We've been renovating it ever since, trying to make it everything you deserved but could never afford. We did this because you gave us everything. You worked yourselves to exhaustion to give us a home, food, education, love, security. You sacrificed every comfort, every luxury, every indulgence to make sure we had what we needed. When we lost this house in 2008, it broke our hearts because we knew it broke yours. We've thought about this house every day for 15 years, knowing how much you missed it, how much it hurt you to lose it. So we made a plan. We saved. We waited for the right moment. And when this house came back on the market, we didn't hesitate. The mortgage is already paid off. The house is yours completely. No payments, no debt, no stress, just home. Every renovation, every update, every piece of furniture, it's all a gift from us to you. This is our way of saying thank you for 40+ years of unconditional love and sacrifice. The photographs throughout the house are meant to remind you that this isn't just a building. It's where you built a family, where you taught us everything that matters, where you showed us what love looks like. You used to apologize for this house being modest. You never understood that it was never about the house. It was about the family inside it. But now, you have both. A beautiful house and the family who loves you more than anything. Welcome home, Mom and Dad. You're finally home. With all our love, Marcus, Jennifer, David, and Sarah. Betty was sobbing so hard she couldn't read the end. Harold took the letter with shaking hands and finished reading it aloud, his voice breaking. "They bought us the house," Betty kept saying between sobs. "They bought us our house back. They renovated it. They made it beautiful. Our babies did this for us." Harold couldn't speak at all. He just held his wife and cried harder than he'd cried since the day they'd locked the door and walked away 15 years earlier. They heard a sound and looked up. Standing in the doorway from the kitchen to the backyard were their 4 children and 9 grandchildren, all of them crying, all of them smiling. "Surprise," Marcus said, his voice choked with emotion. "Welcome home." Block 06, a reunion, 36-42. What happened next was the kind of moment families dream about but rarely experience. Betty and Harold stood in their kitchen, tears streaming down their faces, looking at their 4 children and 9 grandchildren crowded in the doorway. For a long moment nobody moved. The emotion was too overwhelming for words. Then Betty opened her arms, and all 4 of her adult children rushed forward into a group embrace that hadn't happened since they were young. Harold wrapped his arms around all of them, and the 6 members of the original Williams family held each other and cried. The grandchildren watched with wide eyes, many of them crying too, witnessing a moment of love so profound it needed no explanation. "How?" Harold finally managed to ask. "How did you do this?" "We worked together," Marcus said simply. "All of us. We pooled our money. We renovated on weekends. We made it happen. But this must have cost—" Harold couldn't even finish the sentence. "It doesn't matter," Jennifer said firmly. "What you spent on us over 40 years, this doesn't come close, not even close to repaying what you gave us." "We never wanted repayment," Betty protested, still crying. "We were your parents. That's what parents do. And we're your children," Sarah replied gently. "That's what children should do. Give back. Honor the people who gave them everything." "The house is paid off completely," David explained. "No mortgage, no debt. All you have to cover are utilities and property taxes, which your Social Security and pensions will handle easily." Betty shook her head in disbelief. "This is too much. It's too much. You all have your own families, your own expenses, kids to put through college." "Mom," Marcus interrupted gently. You put all four of us through school. You worked double shifts to buy Jennifer's band instruments and David's sports equipment. You sewed Sarah's prom dress by hand because buying one was too expensive. You gave us the down payment for every single one of our first homes. This is just returning the favor. How long have you been planning this? Harold asked. 15 years, all four children said simultaneously, then laughed through their tears. Jennifer explained, Marcus suggested it 2 years after we lost the house. We thought it was impossible then, but we never forgot. We kept hoping, planning, saving when we could. When the house came back on the market 6 months ago, we knew it was now or never. We've been lying to you for 6 months, Sarah admitted. Every time you asked what we were doing on weekends, we'd make up excuses. We were actually here renovating. Every family gathering where someone was missing, they were here, working on the house. Harold looked around the beautiful kitchen, thinking about his children spending their precious free time doing construction work. You did all this yourselves? As much as we could, David confirmed. We hired contractors for the specialized stuff, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, but we did most of the cosmetic work ourselves. Marcus coordinated everything like a military operation. We wanted every room to feel like you, Jennifer added. We tried to remember everything you liked, everything you talked about wishing you could have done. Betty walked to the breakfast nook, running her hands over the cushioned bench. I always wanted a breakfast nook. I used to cut pictures out of magazines and dream about having one someday. We know, Sarah said softly. You showed us those pictures when we were kids. We remembered. Harold opened cabinets, seeing organized shelves, quality dishware. This is all new. You bought all of this? Everything, Marcus confirmed. Dishes, cookware, linens, furniture, everything. We wanted you to walk in and have everything you needed. This is turnkey, Mom and Dad. You can literally move in tomorrow if you want. Tomorrow? Betty looked overwhelmed. I don't even know what to say. I don't know how to process this. The grandchildren, who'd been quietly watching, couldn't contain themselves anymore. Emma, Marcus's 16-year-old daughter, spoke up. Grandma, Grandpa, can we show you something else? Betty nodded, wiping her eyes. Emma led them to the backyard. The grandchildren had been keeping this surprise secret all morning. The backyard was beautifully landscaped with a patio, comfortable outdoor furniture, and a newly planted oak tree. But what made Betty gasp was a small wooden playhouse tucked in the corner. We built it, Emma explained. All of us cousins. Uncle David supervised because of his military construction experience. But we did most of the work. It's for when we come visit. We wanted a place here that's ours, like you gave our parents a place that was theirs. The playhouse had a sign over the door. Williams Grandkids Clubhouse, established 2023. You see, Emma continued, tears in her eyes at her own speech, our parents grew up in this house. They have all these memories, but we never got to. We heard stories about the old house, but we never knew it. So we wanted to create new memories here. We wanted this to be our grandparents' house that we'll remember our whole lives. Harold covered his face with his hands, completely overcome. Betty pulled Emma into a tight hug. This house will have generations of memories now, Betty whispered. Old ones and new ones all mixed together. They spent the next 2 hours touring every corner, hearing stories about the renovation, understanding the thought that went into every choice. The children explained that the bathroom grab bars and walk-in shower were designed with Harold and Betty's safety in mind as they aged. The heating and cooling systems were top-of-the-line efficiency. The windows were energy efficient to keep costs down. We thought about everything, Jennifer said. We wanted you comfortable and safe here for the rest of your lives. In the basement family room, Sarah showed them the extensive photo galleries. We went through decades of family photos. Some we scanned from your albums, some we got from each of our houses. We wanted to make sure every important moment was represented. One wall was dedicated to each child, their school photos from kindergarten through senior year, their sports teams, their activities, their milestones. This is your legacy, Sarah said, gesturing to the photos. 4 children, 9 grandchildren, all because you created a loving home in this house. We wanted you to see that legacy every day. Another wall showed Harold and Betty through the years. Their wedding, young parenthood, middle age, recent family gatherings. a timeline of their life together. "You made us who we are," David said simply. "This house is where that happened. We wanted to honor that." As afternoon became evening, the family ordered pizza and ate together in the beautiful new kitchen, gathered around the large table that could actually fit all 15 of them comfortably. Harold and Betty kept touching things, as if to make sure they were real. The smooth countertops, the comfortable chairs, the quality dishes, it all felt like a dream. "I keep thinking I'll wake up," Betty admitted. "This is too wonderful to be real." "It's real, Mom," Marcus assured her. "This is your house, your home, for the rest of your lives." After dinner, as the grandchildren played in the basement and backyard, the adults sat together in the living room, the same living room where the Williams family had spent countless evenings, now updated and beautiful, but still the same space. "Dad," Marcus said seriously, "I need to tell you something. That day you apologized to us for losing the house. You said you'd failed us. I need you to understand that was wrong. You never failed us. Not once. Not ever." All 4 children nodded in agreement. "You taught us everything that matters," Jennifer added. "Work ethic, integrity, family loyalty, love. We're all successful because of the foundation you gave us, not money, values. Every sacrifice you made, we saw it," David said. "We knew you were working extra shifts for us. We knew you were going without, so we could have. We knew, and we never forgot. And now we have the means to give something back," Sarah finished. "This house isn't charity. It's not a burden. It's our privilege and honor to do this for you." Harold finally spoke, his voice heavy with emotion. "You know what broke my heart most about losing this house? It wasn't the house itself. It was feeling like I'd failed to protect your mother and our family home, like I'd let everyone down." "You didn't fail," Betty said firmly, taking his hand. "We lost a house, but we never lost our family. We never lost what mattered." "But I wanted to give you more," Harold said, looking at his wife. "You deserved more than I could give you." "Now you're giving her more," Marcus said. "You're accepting our gift, which means you're letting us honor you. That's giving her the gift of knowing her children appreciated everything you both did." Betty was crying again. "We're going to move back home. After 15 years, we're really going home." "When?" Sarah asked. "Whenever you're ready. This weekend if you want. Take your time if you need to process. But the house is ready and waiting." "Soon," Betty said, looking at Harold. "Very soon. I don't want to spend another week away from home." Block 07, Ritorno Aular, 42, Sewer 48. 2 weeks later, on a bright Saturday morning in late November 2023, Harold and Betty Williams officially moved back into 1247 Maple Street. Not that there was much to move. The apartment had been furnished with old worn furniture that they donated. The house was already fully furnished with everything they needed. All they brought were personal items, clothes, and a few irreplaceable keepsakes. The entire extended family helped with the move, which took only a few hours. By lunchtime, Harold and Betty were settled in. That evening, sitting on their new porch furniture in the backyard, watching the sun set behind the house, Betty finally let herself believe it was real. "We're home," she said softly. "We're really home." Harold took her hand. 45 years we've been married. I've lived in a lot of places, but this is the only place that ever felt like home. And now we're back." "Because our children love us?" Betty said, tears in her eyes again. "They must have spent over $200,000 between buying and renovating. That's life-changing money. They could have used it for their own families." "They did use it for their own family," Harold corrected gently. "We're family, and this made them happy. You saw their faces that day we first walked in. They were so proud, so excited. Giving us this gift brought them joy." Over the next few weeks, Harold and Betty adjusted to being back in their house. Betty cried the first time she cooked dinner in her new kitchen. She cried the first time she took a shower in the beautiful bathroom. She cried when she made up the bed with the high-quality linens her children had bought. Harold spent hours walking through the house and yard, touching things, remembering. He cried when he looked at the recreated height marks of his children. He cried when he sat in the backyard and saw the new oak tree his children had planted to replace the one he remembered. But they were happy tears, grateful tears, Overwhelming love made visible. The first Sunday after they moved in, all 4 children and their families came for dinner. 15 people filled the house with laughter, conversation, and the kind of chaos that only large families create. Betty cooked in her dream kitchen, refusing all offers of help because she wanted to do it herself. Harold manned the grill on the patio, cooking burgers for the grandchildren. After dinner, the adults sat in the living room while the children played in the basement and backyard. "This feels right," Jennifer said contentedly. "This feels like how it's supposed to be. Family gathering in this house again." "It does," Betty agreed. "I didn't realize how much I missed having space for everyone. The apartment was so cramped. But this is perfect. The grandchildren loved having a house to run around in, a yard to play in, a clubhouse to claim as theirs. They asked when they could have sleepovers. They wanted to know if they could help Grandma plant a garden in the spring. They asked Grandpa to teach them how to grill. This is what we wanted," Marcus said, watching his daughter Emma playing with her younger cousins in the backyard. "We wanted this house to be the center of our family again, a place where everyone gathers, where the grandkids make memories like we did." "Mission accomplished," David said with a smile. Over the following months, the house truly became a family hub once again. Harold and Betty hosted every holiday, Thanksgiving with all 15 family members crowded around the big table, Christmas with presents piled under a tree in the same corner where they'd had a tree for 30 years, Easter egg hunts in the backyard, 4th of July barbecues on the new patio. The grandchildren came for sleepovers, sleeping on air mattresses in the basement family room, giggling late into the night while Harold and Betty smiled upstairs, remembering their own children doing the same thing decades earlier. Betty started a garden in the spring, with all 4 children helping her prepare the soil and plant vegetables. The grandchildren helped water and weed, learning about growing food. Harold taught his grandsons to throw a baseball in the backyard, in almost the exact spot where he'd taught his own sons. He hung a tire swing from the new oak tree, continuing a tradition from 40 years earlier. The house filled with new memories while honoring old ones. The past and present woven together beautifully, but perhaps the most meaningful change was in Harold and Betty themselves. For 15 years in the apartment, they'd existed quietly, gratefully, but without real joy. They'd been comfortable enough, but had lost something essential when they lost their home. Now, back at 1247 Maple Street, they came alive again. Betty sang while cooking. Harold whistled while working in the yard. They laughed more. They invited neighbors over. They seemed younger, lighter, more themselves. "You look happy, Mom," Sarah observed during a visit. "Really, truly happy." "I am," Betty confirmed. "You know, I didn't realize how much losing this house had affected me until I got it back. I thought I'd made peace with it, but having it back, being home again, it's like a weight I didn't know I was carrying has been lifted." "You deserved to have it back," Sarah said. "You deserved to end your story here where it began." On their first anniversary back in the house, November 2024, Harold and Betty invited their children for a special dinner. "We need to say something," Harold began after the meal. "We've been trying to figure out how to express what you all did for us, and nothing seems adequate. You gave us our life back," Betty continued. "Not just a house, but our actual life, our purpose, our center. This last year has been the happiest year we've had since we left this place, and that's because of you. But more than that," Harold added, "you showed us something we should have already known, that we raised amazing human beings, generous, thoughtful, successful, loving people. That's our real legacy. Not this house, but you. The house is just wood and nails," Betty said, her voice thick with emotion. "But what you built for us here is love made visible. Every updated room, every thoughtful detail, every photograph on the wall. It's all love. And we feel it every single day." Marcus spoke for all the siblings. "You told us once that this house was where you built your family. Well, we're just returning the favor. We're building our family here now with you at the center. 3 generations, Jennifer added. Your kids, our kids, all gathering in this house where it all started. That's the real gift. Not the renovation, but the continuation." Harold raised his glass. "To family, to home, to love that spans generations. To Mom and Dad, David added, who taught us everything that matters. They all raised their glasses, tears in most eyes, gratitude filling the room. That night, after everyone left, Harold and Betty sat in their beautiful living room, in the house where they'd raised 4 children and built a life. You know what I think about sometimes? Betty asked. What if we'd never lost this house? What if we'd stayed here comfortably all these years? We'd have been happy, Harold replied. Yes, Betty agreed. But would we truly know how blessed we are? Would we appreciate what we have as deeply? Would our children have had this chance to show us how much they love us? Harold considered this. Probably not. Losing the house was painful. Getting it back this way was miraculous. Sometimes the darkest moments lead to the brightest blessings. Our children gave us more than a house, Betty said softly. They gave us tangible proof that everything we sacrificed mattered, that we did it right, that our love created love. The best inheritance, Harold agreed. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, in the home that had been lost and found, in the house that now held 3 generations of memories, in the place where love had always lived and always would. Bloco 8, O Legado, 4852. 2 years after Harold and Betty moved back into 1247 Maple Street, their story had touched people far beyond their immediate family. What started as a private family miracle became public when Sarah, the youngest Williams child, wrote an essay about the experience for a local community magazine. The essay, titled How My Siblings and I Bought Back Our Childhood Home for Our Parents, went viral online. News outlets across the country picked up the story. Harold and Betty found themselves being interviewed on local television, their story of loss, love, and family devotion resonating with millions of people. Elderly couples' children buy back foreclosed family home and renovate it as surprise gift. The headlines read, The story touched a nerve in America, where many families had suffered similar foreclosures during the 2008 financial crisis. The Williams family received thousands of letters and emails from people sharing their own stories. Adult children inspired to help aging parents, parents grateful for the reminder of what truly mattered, families who'd lost homes during hard times but never lost each other. But more than the publicity, the true legacy was being built daily at 1247 Maple Street. The house had become exactly what the Williams children intended, the center of their family universe across 3 generations. Harold taught his grandson Luke to build a birdhouse in the garage, the same garage where he taught Marcus decades earlier. Betty taught her granddaughter Emma to bake cookies in the beautiful kitchen, just as she'd taught Jennifer years ago. The grandchildren spent weekends at Grandma and Grandpa's house, a phrase that filled Harold and Betty with joy every time they heard it. The kids had their favorite spots, the basement family room for movie nights, the backyard tire swing, the clubhouse the cousins had built together. Family traditions evolved and continued. Every Sunday, at least some of the family gathered for dinner. Every holiday was celebrated at 1247 Maple Street. Summer barbecues, fall bonfires, spring gardening, winter cocoa by the fireplace. But beyond the events, it was the ordinary moments that mattered most. Harold and Betty being available when a grandchild had a bad day at school, Betty teaching a granddaughter to sew, Harold helping a grandson with science homework, the casual weeknight dinners when one of the children stopped by with their family. This is what I wanted most, Betty told Jennifer during one ordinary Tuesday evening visit. Not a fancy house or expensive things, just this. Family around the table, grandchildren playing in the yard, feeling needed and included in everyone's lives. You'll always be needed and included, Jennifer assured her. This house ensures it. You're not isolated in an apartment anymore. You're central to everything. Harold and Betty also became neighborhood fixtures once again. They knew their neighbors, attended community events, hosted block parties. The house that had once been a foreclosure eyesore was now one of the most loved homes on Maple Street. Neighbors who remembered the Williams family from years ago were thrilled to see them back. "It's good to have you home," was a common refrain. 3 years after the surprise, Marcus's daughter Emma graduated high school and prepared to leave for college. At her graduation party, held at 1247 Maple Street. She gave a speech that brought everyone to tears. "I want to thank my grandparents," Emma said, "for teaching my parents about sacrifice, love, and family. And I want to thank my parents and aunts and uncles for teaching me the same by what they did for Grandma and Grandpa. I'm going to college, knowing what really matters in life, not money or things, but family and love, and showing up for the people who showed up for you." She looked at Harold and Betty with tears in her eyes. "Grandma and Grandpa, I know I was too young to remember this house the first time you lived here, but I'll remember it forever now. I'll remember Sunday dinners and cookie baking and Grandpa teaching me to throw a curveball in the backyard. I'll remember that when things got hard, my family came together, and I'll carry those memories and those lessons with me forever." Harold and Betty couldn't speak. They just opened their arms, and Emma fell into their embrace. Later that evening, as the party wound down and family started heading home, Betty found Marcus alone on the back patio. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything, for never forgetting, for making this happen." "Thank you," Marcus replied, "for raising me to value family enough to do something like this. You and Dad created this by how you loved us. We just continued what you started." "Promise me something," Betty said seriously. "Promise me you'll all keep this house in the family. After your father and I are gone, don't sell it. Keep it as the family gathering place. Let your children bring their children here someday." "Already planned," Marcus assured her. "We've set up a family trust. The house will stay in the Williams family for generations. It'll always be here for family to gather, just like you wanted." Betty hugged her oldest son, grateful beyond words. 5 years after moving back into 1247 Maple Street, Harold and Betty celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary with all 4 children, all 9 grandchildren, and several hundred friends and extended family at the house. The backyard and house were decorated beautifully. Tables of food covered the patio. Laughter and conversation filled the air. 3 generations of Williams family, mixed with friends, neighbors, and community members whose lives had been touched by the family's story. During the celebration, each of the 4 children gave speeches honoring their parents. 50 years ago, Marcus began, our parents made a commitment to each other, to love, honor, and support each other through everything life brought. They kept that commitment through poverty, through hard times, through losing their home and everything they'd built. They never wavered. They also made a commitment to us, Jennifer continued, to raise us with love, teach us values, and give us every advantage they could. They kept that commitment even when it cost them everything. What they gave us wasn't just material support, David added. It was a model of what love looks like, unconditional, sacrificial, unwavering. They showed us how to be good people, good parents, and good family members. So when we had the chance to give something back, Sarah concluded, it wasn't a burden or sacrifice. It was an honor and a privilege. We're standing in this house today celebrating our parents' 50 years together because they taught us that family shows up for each other. Always. Harold spoke last, his voice emotional but strong. Betty and I thought we knew what love was when we married 50 years ago. We thought we understood family, but our children taught us something deeper. They taught us that love multiplies through generations, that sacrifice creates gratitude. That family is the most valuable thing we can build. He gestured to the house around them. This place has been our home twice now. The first time we built it on a tight budget, making do with what we had, creating a home through love, even when we couldn't afford much else. The second time our children gave it back to us more beautiful than we ever imagined possible. But you know what hasn't changed, Harold continued. What made this place special was never the walls or the furniture or the fixtures. It was the people inside it. It was family gathered around a table, children playing in a yard, love expressed in everyday moments. 50 years ago, I promised to love Betty forever, Harold finished. I've kept that promise, and she's given me a family that will keep loving long after we're gone. That's the real legacy. Not this house, but the love that fills it. As the party continued into the evening, grandchildren ran through the yard that Harold and Betty had first seen in 1978. Multiple generations mixed and mingled in rooms that held decades of memories. The house was alive with family. exactly as it was meant to be. Betty stood on the back patio watching it all, tears of joy streaming down her face. 50 years of marriage, 4 children, 9 grandchildren, a house lost and found, a legacy of love that would continue long after she and Harold were gone. "Happy?" Harold asked, putting his arm around her. "More than I knew was possible," Betty replied. "We're blessed beyond measure." "We are," Harold agreed. "We really are." As the sun set behind 1247 Maple Street, the Williams family continued celebrating 3 generations strong in the house that had been bought with sacrifice, lost to hardship, and reclaimed through love. The house that would forever be home. In Sacramento, 52054 Forever. If this story of family, sacrifice, and unconditional love touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We share powerful, true stories about ordinary people whose love creates extraordinary moments. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story, and let us know in the comments, what's the most meaningful place from your childhood? Would you do something like this for your parents? What's the most generous thing someone has ever done for you? Share your stories below because your experiences inspire others and remind us all of what truly matters in life. Harold and Betty Williams' story teaches us profound lessons. That sacrifice creates gratitude that echoes through generations. That love multiplies when it's given freely. That home isn't about the building, but about the people inside it. That family shows up for each other, especially when it's hard. Most importantly, their story reminds us that what we give to our children isn't just material support, but a model of how to love. The Williams children gave back to their parents because their parents first taught them how to give. Think about the people in your life who sacrificed for you. Parents, grandparents, mentors, teachers. Have you told them what their sacrifice meant? Have you shown them that their love wasn't wasted? Sometimes we wait too long. We assume there will be time later to express gratitude, to give back, to show up. The Williams children didn't wait. When they had the opportunity, they took it. And they gave their parents years of joy in the home they'd built together. What opportunity are you waiting for? What gratitude are you holding back? What gesture of love are you postponing until someday? Harold and Betty Williams spent 15 years thinking their story with their family home had ended sadly. They never imagined their children were writing a new chapter, one more beautiful than anything they could have created alone. Your story isn't over either. There's still time to show up, give back, and express the love that matters most. Thanks for watching. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded of what family really means. And remember, home isn't a place. It's the people who love you, showing up in the ways that matter most. We'll see you in the next story.